Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful. The most dangerous person walking this earth is not loud. She ain't always seen. She doesn't need a platform, applause, or permission. No, she's that woman who walks alone but walks with God. You see, when life stripped her down, when people left, when the world turned its back, she didn't break. She bent, she prayed. She grew. And while they were laughing, while they were doubting, she was getting forged in fire. God wasn't punishing her. He was preparing her. She ain't looking for attention. She's focused. She's faithful. And you can't shake a woman whose strength doesn't come from man. It comes from the Most High. That's a kind of power you can't touch, a kind of peace you can't steal. You thought she was weak because she was quiet. Let me tell you something. That silence, that was her loading. That was her rising. That was her listening to a voice greater than yours. She don't need revenge. She don't need to prove herself. She lets God handle that. And when she moves with purpose. She walks into rooms with grace and leaves with impact. She ain't here to impress. She's here to fulfill. You can't break a woman who knows who she belongs to. You can't intimidate someone who's already conquered her own fear. That woman who found herself alone, face down in prayer with nothing but faith and fire. That's the one you better not underestimate. Because when a woman walks with God, truly walks with him, she doesn't just survive, she reigns. And that, my friend, is the most dangerous one of all. Solitude with God creates unshakable confidence because it strips away the noise of the world and invites a soul-deep intimacy with the Creator. In a society that constantly bombards us with distractions, comparisons, opinions, and endless pressure to conform, solitude becomes a sacred space. And when that solitude is filled not with emptiness, but with divine presence, it transforms into power. A woman alone with God is not lonely. She is in the presence of truth. She is not abandoned. She is being refined. It is in that quiet space where no one else is watching that her spirit begins to hear the whisper of her worth. It is in those moments that her identity is no longer shaped by what others say, but by what God knows. This kind of solitude isn't isolation. It's revelation. It reveals who you are without the mask, without the approval, without the applause. In the silence, when there's nothing to lean on but faith, God begins to show you just how strong you really are. That strength isn't loud. It doesn't boast. It doesn't need validation. It becomes a calm confidence, rooted in knowing that if God is with you, no one can stand against you. When the world tries to define success, beauty, worth, or strength by shallow standards, the woman in solitude with God is grounded in something eternal. Her value is not up for debate. Her purpose isn't shaken by rejection. She isn't moved by popularity or praise because her assurance doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from the throne. Confidence built in the presence of God can't be shaken by the storms of life. Why? Because it wasn't built by man and it won't be broken by man. That confidence is the result of battles fought on the inside, of prayers whispered through tears, of nights spent wrestling with doubt and still choosing to believe. It comes from knowing that even when you walk through the fire, you are not alone. It's the awareness that grace covers your past, strength holds your present, and purpose calls from your future. A woman who has met God in solitude doesn't need to prove herself. She walks differently. She speaks with intention. She shows up fully, not because she's perfect, but because she's anchored. You see, confidence that comes from achievements, beauty, status, or validation is fragile. It can be taken away as quickly as it was given. But confidence that comes from knowing you are fearfully and wonderfully made by the hands of the Almighty, that kind of confidence can't be stolen. The woman who finds herself in God's presence begins to understand that every trial was training, every rejection was redirection, every silence was sacred. She starts to realize that the world may have forgotten her, but heaven never did. Her solitude wasn't her breakdown. It was her breakthrough. And it's in that solitude where God begins to reveal vision. He shows her who she really is. Not the version the world tried to shape, not the image she tried to maintain, but the warrior he created. And from that moment, she becomes a force because she's no longer trying to chase identity. She's walking in it. She's no longer living for validation. She's living from victory. She doesn't panic when doors close. She doesn't crumble when people walk away. She's learned that closed doors are often God's protection. She's discovered that being set apart doesn't mean forgotten. It means chosen. That kind of woman scares the enemy because she can't be manipulated. She can't be distracted by gossip, discouraged by delay, or defeated by doubt. Her solitude wasn't her weakness, it was her weapon. That time alone with God made her dangerous to darkness because now she knows where her help comes from. She knows that every breath she takes is filled with purpose. She isn't looking outward for strength. She's drawing it from the well inside her, the well God filled when no one else could. It's a confidence that doesn't need explanation. It's felt. It's seen in the way she carries herself, in the peace that surrounds her, even in chaos. She doesn't run from conflict. She stands firm. She doesn't fear failure. She knows that even in falling, she's learning. Her confidence is rooted in the one who holds all things together. And because of that, she isn't easily broken. Solitude has taught her to sit in discomfort, to be okay with the unknown, and to trust the timing of heaven. It's in the waiting where she grew. It's in the silence where she heard his voice. It's in the stillness where she discovered that she didn't need a platform to have power. She's unshakable, not because she's never been shaken, but because every time life knocked her down, she got back up stronger. She got back up wiser. She got back up knowing that her steps are ordered. Confidence like that doesn't come from books, compliments, or achievements. It comes from the secret place, the place where God speaks when the world is silent, the place where tears are turned into oil, the place where brokenness becomes beauty. That woman is not concerned with being seen because she knows she's already known, not by many, but by the one that matters. The world celebrates loud confidence, aggressive, flashy, self-declaring. But the most powerful confidence is quiet, intentional, divine. It doesn't compete. It doesn't need to be right. It doesn't seek revenge. It's too focused on becoming everything God created her to be. A woman who has spent time alone with God isn't trying to win approval. She's already received grace. She isn't trying to prove her worth. She knows her worth was already written before she was born. That solitude taught her to listen, to discern, to obey. And in that obedience, she found her power. The most confident people are often the ones who spent time in silence, the ones who have faced themselves, confronted their pain, acknowledged their flaws, and still chose to move forward. When a woman finds herself alone with God, she finds clarity. She finds healing. She finds direction. And when she comes out of that season, she doesn't come out empty. She comes out armored. She comes out appointed. She comes out with a light that cannot be dimmed. This kind of confidence shakes atmospheres. It commands respect without saying a word. It creates ripple effects in rooms. It disrupts the norm because it's not driven by ego. It's driven by eternity. And once you've encountered God in the depths of solitude, you no longer fear solitude itself. You begin to crave it. You begin to seek it. That's where transformation lives. And once you've been transformed in the presence of God, no one can ever put you back into who you used to be. That's what makes her unshakable. That's what makes her dangerous. Rejection and isolation are preparation, not punishment, though in the moment they rarely feel that way. When you are rejected by people, opportunities, or even your own expectations, it feels like a loss. When you find yourself isolated, cut off from the crowd, overlooked or forgotten, it can seem like something is wrong with you. But what feels like punishment is often the very tool God uses to prepare you for a future you can't yet see. The process may be painful, but the purpose is powerful. Rejection has a way of revealing what truly matters. It strips away the need for approval and teaches you that validation from people can never replace alignment with your purpose. When you're rejected, it's easy to think you're not enough or that you're broken. But what if rejection is God's way of removing you from something that could have distracted, delayed, or even destroyed you? What if the you heard was actually divine protection? What if being isolated wasn't abandonment, but a call into consecration? These aren't just ideas, they're patterns. Time and time again, people who did something meaningful had to walk through seasons of rejection and isolation before they stepped into their calling. Think about it. A seed doesn't grow in the spotlight. It grows in the dark underground where no one sees the struggle. No one sees the breaking, the stretching, the pushing against the soil. But that's where life begins. That's where the roots form. Rejection is often the burying. Isolation is often the soil. And in that space, something stronger, deeper, and more resilient is being formed. God doesn't punish you by setting you apart. He prepares you by it. When you're isolated, you learn how to hear his voice. You learn how to stand on your own. You learn how to be content without applause, how to move without a crowd, and how to grow in silence. And that is the kind of strength the world can't take away. Too many people see rejection as failure, but rejection often means redirection. It's the door that closed so you wouldn't settle for less. It's the relationship that ended so you could grow into who you were meant to be. It's the opportunity that fell through so your vision could be refined. And when you're in that place of isolation, when nobody is calling, when the invitations stop, and when everything feels like it's on pause, that's where the work begins. That's when your foundation is tested. Are you doing it for attention, or are you doing it because it's your assignment? Are you chasing the platform, or are you walking in purpose? Isolation gives you the space to answer those questions. It's where you wrestle with your own thoughts, your own insecurities, and your own fears. But it's also where God meets you, not in the noise, not in the chaos, but in the quiet, in the desert, in the cave, in the silence that forces you to lean not on your own understanding, but on his wisdom. That's where discernment is sharpened. That's where resilience is born. That's where identity is clarified, not by the world, but by the Creator. Sometimes rejection reveals people who were never meant to go with you into your next chapter. It uncovers true motives, surfaces hidden pride, and protects your destiny from premature exposure. You don't want people around you who love what you do but don't care who you are. You don't want to build something in shaky relationships or false loyalty. Rejection filters all of that out. It's not always personal, it's purposeful. And when you begin to see that, it changes your posture. You stop chasing what was and start preparing for what's coming. The silence of isolation can feel heavy, but it is also sacred. It's the time when God begins to show you what needs to be healed. The wounds you buried, the lies you believe, the habits that no longer serve you. In that quiet place, the mirror is held up, not to shame you, but to shape you. And when you face those truths, when you deal with what you've been running from, something shifts inside you. You begin to walk differently. Not with arrogance, but with authority. Not with fear, but with focus. Isolation builds discipline. There's no one there to applaud your progress, no one to cheer you on, but you keep going. You keep building. You keep rising. That consistency in the quiet seasons sets the stage for strength in the visible ones. Because you've learned how to keep showing up even when no one's watching. That's preparation. That's character development. That's the kind of training you can't get from comfort or constant validation. That's the result of being alone with your thoughts and still choosing growth. Rejection teaches you how to walk away with your head high. It teaches you how to release what no longer serves your future. It teaches you that you don't need to beg for what God didn't ordain. Every no becomes a gift. Every closed door becomes confirmation. You begin to realize that just because something looked good doesn't mean it was right. Just because it felt familiar doesn't mean it was meant for you. You stop mourning over what left and start making room for what's next. Both rejection and isolation challenge your perspective. Will you see it as a setback, or will you see it as a setup? Will you let it make you bitter, or will you let it make you better? The way you interpret those moments determines how you come out on the other side. If you embrace the preparation, the elevation will come. And when it does, you'll be ready, not just externally, but internally. You'll have the character to sustain the calling. You'll have the clarity to handle the weight. And most importantly, you'll have the humility to give credit where it's due. The truth is, if everything always worked out easily, if you were always included, always celebrated, always approved, you would never develop the depth required to carry destiny. You would never learn to rely on God fully. You would never know what it means to find peace in the storm. That's why rejection and isolation are necessary. Not because God is trying to hurt you, but because he's trying to prepare you to hold something greater than you can imagine. What feels like being pushed away is sometimes God pulling you closer. What feels like a void is actually space being made. And what feels like punishment is often the exact environment where purpose is forged. It's in those seasons that your character is tested and your heart is refined. And once you come through it, you'll see that the rejection wasn't a loss, it was a lesson. The isolation wasn't a curse. It was a calling that when a woman aligns with God's purpose, she becomes unstoppable because her strength no longer comes from herself, It comes from a divine source that cannot be shaken. She no longer relies on the opinions of others, the success of the moment, or the applause of the crowd. She is rooted in something eternal. Purpose isn't just a goal or a dream. It's a calling that is placed within her by the Creator himself. And when she discovers that calling, when she finally understands why she was made, what she was created to do, and who sent her, she begins to move with a different kind of power. This kind of woman doesn't chase trends. She follows truth. She doesn't panic in the face of adversity because she knows she's not walking alone. She doesn't fall with them. She knows that sometimes what looks like the end is actually the beginning of what God had planned all along. Her confidence isn't tied to comfort. It's built on conviction. That's what she stands for, and she's not afraid to walk away from anything that distracts her from her divine assignment. The moment she says yes to God's will, she becomes dangerous to the enemy. Her obedience becomes a weapon. Her faith becomes a fire. She may not look like the world's definition of powerful. She may not be loud, boastful, or flashy, but when she walks into a room, things shift. Not because she demands attention, but because she carries presence, God's presence. She knows who she is, and more importantly, she knows who she is. That knowledge gives her clarity. It gives her discernment. It gives her the courage to say no when others say yes, to stand firm when others fall back, and to speak truth when silence would be easier. There's a certain authority that comes over a woman when she stops living for herself and starts living for something greater. She no longer measures success by money, fame, or recognition. She measures it by obedience. She sees every obstacle not as a setback, but as training. She sees every delay not as denial, but as development. When a woman aligns with God's purpose, even her pain becomes useful. Even her scars become stories. Even her trials become testimonies. Nothing is wasted because everything is woven into the bigger plan that God is unfolding through her life. She doesn't beg for doors to open. She trusts that the right ones will swing wide when the time is right. She doesn't force relationships that God didn't ordain. She understands that alignment matters more than attachment. She's not interested in just being liked. She's committed to being used by God. And when you're used by God, you will be misunderstood. You will be rejected, but you will also be elevated in ways the world can't explain. When a woman chooses purpose over popularity, she unlocks a level of peace and power that no person or problem can take away. This woman has vision. Not just ambition, but vision that's guided by heaven. She sees beyond the temporary. She isn't easily distracted. She's strategic with her time, intentional with her words, and focused in her walk. Every decision runs through the filter of her purpose. If it doesn't align, it doesn't belong. She's learned how to wait when it's hard and how to trust when it hurts. She doesn't need everything to make sense. She just needs to know that God is leading. And that's enough. Her strength doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence. She knows she'll stumble. She knows she'll have moments of doubt, moments of fear. But she also knows that God's grace is sufficient. She leans into that grace. She draws from it daily. It gives her the freedom to keep moving, even when she doesn't feel qualified. Because she understands that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And once she accepts that truth, nothing can hold her back. Not her past, not her mistakes, not her weaknesses. Everything that once tried to break her now fuels her. She becomes a light in dark places. A voice of truth in a world full of noise. She lifts others even as she climbs. Her life becomes a mirror that reflects the goodness and faithfulness of God. She doesn't need to preach from a stage. Her walk preaches louder than her words ever could. Her actions, her discipline, her resilience, they all speak of a woman who knows her purpose and is committed to fulfilling it. When a woman aligns with God's purpose, she doesn't compete. She collaborates. She doesn't envy. She empowers. She isn't threatened by other women's success because she understands that there's room for all of us in the kingdom. Her identity isn't built on comparison. It's anchored in Christ. That kind of identity is unshakable. It doesn't rise and fall with trends or seasons. It stays consistent, rooted in eternal truth. She's learned to prioritize the secret place, to protect her peace, and to preserve her energy. She knows that her strength is renewed not in hustle, but in His presence. So she makes time for it. She makes space for it. That's where she gets her strategy. That's where she finds rest. That's where she hears his voice and receives the wisdom to navigate the complexities of life. And because she stays close to the source, she never runs dry. The road isn't always easy. There are days when doubt creeps in, days when fatigue tries to settle, days when the weight of her assignment feels too heavy to carry. But she remembers that she's not carrying it alone. God is with her and working through her. That awareness gives her the strength to keep going, to press when it's hard, to trust when it's unclear, to obey even when it costs her. People may not always understand her. They may question her choices, criticize her path, or misinterpret her silence. But she doesn't live for their understanding. She lives for his approval. And because of that, she's unstoppable. Not because she never faces battles, but because she knows who fights them for her. Not because she never falls, but because she knows how to rise. Not because she's fearless, but because she does it anyway. Scared, surrendered, and set apart, she carries legacy in her steps. Every move she makes is for more than just herself. She's breaking cycles, shifting atmospheres, and paving the way for others to walk in freedom. Her alignment with God's purpose isn't just about her success. It's about generational impact. She understands that purpose is bigger than preference. It requires sacrifice, but it brings fulfillment that nothing else can offer. And when she walks in that purpose, she walks with heaven's backing. This is why she can't be stopped. She's not running her own race. She's running the race marked out for her. She's not trying to be anyone else. She's becoming who God designed her to be. Every step she takes is intentional. Every decision is a seed. And every moment is an opportunity to glorify God with her life. That's the power of a woman aligned with purpose. That's the kind of woman who changes everything. The world underestimates the silent strength found in faith because it often mistakes volume for power and noise for influence. Society praises what is loud, flashy, aggressive, and constantly visible. But faith, real faith, is often quiet. It moves in silence. It doesn't demand attention, yet it changes lives. It doesn't shout its presence, yet it reshapes destinies. The kind of strength that comes from faith doesn't parade itself in front of the world. It rests in the quiet assurance that no matter what is happening on the outside, something unshakable is holding you together on the inside. There is a different kind of courage in those who walk by faith. It's not the kind that fights every battle with fists raised. It's the kind that endures storms without losing peace. It's the kind that keeps going when there are no guarantees, no applause, and no immediate results. That kind of strength isn't celebrated often because it doesn't fit the world's idea of what it means to be strong. It doesn't fit the mold of public validation, but that doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it's often more real, more lasting, and more transformational than anything that comes from external power or human approval. Faith teaches you how to stand when everything around you says to fall. It teaches you how to hope when hope seems foolish. It gives you vision when the road ahead is dark and unclear. And it gives you peace when chaos is knocking at the door. The world can't understand that kind of strength because it's not rooted in the world. It doesn't come from the self. It comes from surrender. It comes from trust. It comes from the deep belief that there is more going on than what the eyes can see, and that what's unseen is stronger than anything that tries to break you. The silent strength found in faith shows up when you keep going, even when you feel like quitting. It shows up in the mother who prays in her kitchen while her children sleep. It shows up in the young woman who walks away from what the world offers because she knows it's not what God called her to. It shows up in the man who chooses integrity over success, even when no one's watching. It shows up in the quiet tears of someone who's been hurt deeply, yet still chooses forgiveness. These moments don't make headlines, but they move mountains. There is power in restraint. There is authority in stillness. Faith doesn't need to prove anything. Simply trusts, and that trust is its weapon. When you have faith, you don't need to respond to every insult, react to every fear, or chase every opportunity. You wait, you discern, you walk in wisdom. And the world might call that weakness, but in reality, it's strength under control. It's knowing who you are and whose you are so deeply that nothing outside of you can derail what's been planted inside of you. Faith doesn't guarantee ease, it guarantees endurance. And that endurance builds a different kind of character, one that doesn't panic in the delay, one that doesn't crumble under pressure, one that holds its ground when others flee. That kind of strength is developed in the unseen moments. In the prayers, no one hears. In the sacrifices, no one applauds. In the obedience, no one celebrates. Yet those are the very things that shape a person into someone unbreakable. The world claps for the loud victories. It praises the big wins, the spotlight moments, the dramatic turnarounds. But faith builds you slowly, quietly, intentionally. It chisels away the ego. It rewires your thinking. It heals wounds that no one else even knows you carry. It builds an inner strength that doesn't rely on circumstance, recognition, or control. And because it isn't loud, it's often underestimated. People assume you're passive. They assume you're weak, but they don't see the war you've won on the inside. They don't see the tears you turned into prayers. They don't see the nights you fought through doubt and still chose to believe. There is strength in the decision to keep loving when it would be easier to hate. There is strength in choosing to show up every day in a world that tries to wear you down. There is strength in staying rooted in truth when lies are more convenient. The person of faith doesn't need to explain themselves. Their life speaks. Their consistency speaks. Their peace speaks. While the world shouts louder and louder to be heard, faith whispers, and its whisper carries more power than 1,000 screams. The world doesn't teach us to sit still and listen. It teaches us to react, to win, to prove, to dominate. But the strength of faith is that it allows you to be still and know, to trust that what is yours will not miss you, to believe that even in waiting, something holy is unfolding, to understand that sometimes the greatest victories are internal. The greatest transformations happen in silence, without fanfare, without an audience. You begin to walk differently when your strength comes from faith. You're not moved by every opinion. You're not shaken by every trial. You carry a stillness that confuses those around you. They can't understand why you're calm in chaos, why you're hopeful in loss, why you're confident in the unknown. But you know it's not you holding yourself together. It's your faith in him. And that is what makes you unshakable. There is no stage big enough to showcase the power of silent strength, because it doesn't seek attention. It seeks purpose. It seeks alignment. It seeks truth. The world underestimates it because they can't measure it, but heaven sees it and heaven honors it. Every time you choose faith over fear, trust over control, peace over panic, you grow stronger. And you may not see it right away, but you are being built into something mighty, something durable, something unstoppable. What makes this strength so different is that it's not performative. It's not based on outcomes. It's based on trust in God's character. And when your foundation is his faithfulness, not your feelings, not your circumstances, not your image, then your life becomes a testimony. You become a quiet storm, full of purpose, full of vision, full of light. And while the world is busy chasing the next big thing, you're becoming everything God designed you to be. A quiet faith that holds you through the hardest seasons will one day be the same faith that opens doors you never imagined. The same faith that kept you from breaking will be the faith that lifts you higher. And the strength you build in silence will carry you when the noise comes. Because it's not rooted in emotion or performance, it's rooted in the eternal. And anything rooted in the eternal cannot be moved. That is the silent strength the world overlooks, but heaven never misses when the world looks for power in noise, appearance, and control. It often misses the quiet strength that comes from faith, purpose, and divine alignment. But the woman who stands alone with God, shaped by solitude, strengthened through rejection, and grounded in unwavering belief, becomes truly unstoppable. Her power doesn't come from the world. It comes from within, from the presence of the one who formed her. She doesn't need validation because she walks in vision. She isn't weakened by silence. She's refined by it. And in a world that underestimates what it cannot see, her silent strength becomes her greatest weapon. She is not forgotten. She is not broken. She is not behind. She is being built. And when she steps forward in the fullness of God's purpose, the world will finally see what heaven always knew. She was dangerous the moment she surrendered.